everybody. Reporting to you again from the Glamour City, Hollywood.
Not really that familiar with the fact that coffee is actually a fruit, but didn't realize that it was surrounded by a fruit that's arguably the better half of what the coffee plant has to offer. And we were learning about this as we were experimenting and we became fascinated with the flavor notes. We started learning about its nutritional value. And then we started wondering, why isn't the world more familiar with coffee fruit, where everybody knows what coffee is, but nobody knows where it comes from?
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by Paul Evers, co-founder and CEO of RIFF. Welcome to the show today.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate being here.
All right. So you're based in Bend, Oregon, and of course, Oregonians have a proud heritage of being fiercely independent. And of course, it's all about that kind of uniqueness. And I wonder, with that as a backdrop, if you could talk about the genesis of your company, what it does, and how you got started, and what was the independence that you started?
Well, okay, that's a great question, and thank you so much. Oregonians are also, fiercely defensive of the environment as well. So it's a nice combination between independence and being good stewards of the environment. But we started as a cold brew coffee company back in 2018, and we're making cold brew. We're excited about celebrating coffee's natural flavors. When you look at the flavors available in coffee and you assign colors to them, it's quite vibrant. So our whole idea was to disrupt the coffee industry and playing in the cold brew segment, which was the disruptive arm within coffee. And with innovation as one of our cornerstones, coming from a kind of more of a craft beverage background. And then we stumbled upon an issue in 2019 when we were experimenting with coffee fruit, which is the fruited pulp that surrounds the bean on the plant. Coming from, an experience, my background is more in beer and other non-alc beverages, as well as other different consumer products. I was not really that familiar with the fact that coffee is actually a fruit. I mean, I had an idea it was a fruit, but didn't realize that it was surrounded by a fruit that's arguably the better half of what the coffee plant has to offer. And we were learning about this as we were experimenting and we became fascinated with the flavor notes. We started learning about its nutritional value. And then we started wondering, why isn't the world more familiar with coffee fruit, where everybody knows what coffee is, but nobody knows where it comes from?
So you're again, without mentioning the specific term, the fruity pulp, I think, is what you're referring to, that surrounds that coffee bean on the plant. And I wonder historically if that was usually a byproduct of the processing of coffee beans.
Well, yes, it is. Historically, that's the case. But when you look back 400 or 500 years, the primary product, agricultural product from the harvesting of coffee was the fruit. And if you go to the places of origin, that have a long history with coffee, like Yemen, Ethiopia, or South America, it's commonly the fruit is dried and then commonly translated to a hot beverage like a tea, steeping that dried fruit in hot water. That's a very common beverage in those countries of origin. But as exporting of the coffee beans became more the primary agricultural product, and then to wealthy countries like the U.S., people we became as a population very disconnected from the source and really had little understanding of what how coffee is grown, harvested, and processed. So historically, coffee fruit is harvested as a byproduct. Some of it is translated into fertilizer by composting. Some of it's translated to biofuels. Some of it's used as animal feed. But we actually partnered with Oregon State University with a senior climate change scientist there in a robust environmental impact study. We believe it's the first of its kind. And one of the findings there was that 70%, as much as 70% of the coffee fruit that is produced as a byproduct is literally thrown to waste, which is a huge travesty, not just for environmental impact, food waste being one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, but because it's the better half of what the coffee fruit or the coffee plant has to offer from our point of view.
You know, it's interesting because I think for those that are more historians, right, they appreciate the way it was originally consumed by maybe the indigenous people or people that consumed it for what it was versus the current modern times where we've commercialized it to the point where we've kind of decompartmentalized or fractionalized these products. But I wonder, the local people that are growing these things, whether it's in Africa, Central America, South America, for instance, they fundamentally know the benefits of the coffee fruits. So do they not have a say in terms of what happens to that, or just, because the corporations that are, that are purchasing from these farmers, they're basically having to go through this process of creating byproducts, essentially?
Well, the amount is massive. There's about 25 billion pounds of green coffee harvested and produced for export each year. That equates to about 100 billion pounds of coffee fruit that's produced as a byproduct. So it's massive. So as you talked about, when, with coffee being commercialized, it was really focused exclusively on the beans, which is actually a two-headed seed. So yes, they understand the benefits of it. I don't think they understand the totality of the nutritional benefits of it, because there's a lot of clinical research that still needs to be conducted. But the real issue is demand, and demand driven by awareness. So that's what we're seeking to solve by translating coffee fruit to food and beverage products, packaged products that would appeal to a mass audience. We can generate demand, divert this way, save coffee fruit from going to waste, and translate it into a food and beverage product that actually benefits human health and wellness. And so that product is RIFF Energy Plus, which is a 12-ounce can. And it is a functional beverage. It's got an energy benefit, obviously, because it has caffeine in it, as well as an immunity benefit. This is our foray into a functional beverage line. We're also looking at other categories in consumer food and beverage products. But that's what we need to do, is generate demand to where there's injected, some economic value to coffee fruit, and it becomes that will actually solve a whole host of issues and problems related to coffee and its sustainability problems.
So one of the companies that we've invested is called Brightseed out of South San Francisco, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And what they're doing within the computational biology is breaking down all the compounds or phytonutrients found in the plant kingdom, some of which is in the edible kingdom, some of which is in the inedible, including in forests, but also in the ocean as well. And certainly, when we think about coffee fruit as an example, I wonder what kind of research has been done. You mentioned a study just a few minutes ago, but what's been done around really understanding compounds, not just the flavor profile, but really the antioxidants, the vitamins and minerals, and other things that have real, true health benefits?
Yeah, there's little research available. There's a nice article that's on WebMD with their Nourish arm, but it's what they found is that the coffee fruit, the fruit itself, is loaded with antioxidants, polyphenols, magnesium, potassium, iron. It scores very high on the superfruit scale, and it's got all kinds of what they suspect are potential benefits for human health and wellness, everything from brain function to other aspects of the human body. So there needs to be more research, and it's just kind of surprising for a small coffee company like ourselves out of Bend, Oregon, in this industry that is 400 years old and is ubiquitous throughout the globe, and that there's so little that's known about the benefits of coffee fruit.
I think about Analogously, yerba mate and the company Guayaki, I think it is, that has
Yes.
really, understood that here's really a tree technically, and the leaves from that has incredible health benefits, and of course, it is it's a taste that you have to kind of get acclimated to, but the health benefits is incredible, and I wonder how do we actually foster more research so that people can understand the benefit because coffee is a huge market, and to me, to neglect this other piece, the 90% of the other piece, aside from the bean, is really missing the boat. And to your point, if people are better informed and they understand the health benefits from it, then you can also create that demand as well.
It's really interesting because when we started, experimenting with coffee fruit, really fell in love with the flavor profiles. It's an exotic, it has exotic flavor notes. So it's sort of, flavor notes that are not familiar to consumers. So for some, it's an acquired taste. But it's really wonderful. It's got notes of dried fruit, citrus, and sweetness of honey. And then you think about the nutritional benefits. Not only that, it has caffeine in it, so you get the energy benefit of it. And it's just so surprising to us that there isn't more that's known about it, and that nobody is really championing the true story of coffee, what we call coffee's dirty, not so little secret. I think so many of the big brands and big, the larger companies within coffee are so tied to the existing economics of coffee. It's a hard thing for them to, I think, maybe champion the broader story or to figure out how to solve the problem. But, coffee really has a massive sustainability problem, and it's only going to get worse. Leading senior climate change scientists are now predicting that by the year 2050, if not sooner, as much as 50% of the current land being used for coffee production will no longer be viable due to rising temperatures.
Right.
Arabica, as a coffee, as a coffee variety, it represents 70% of the world's coffee. Ideally, it's grown in stable temperature, a region with stable temperature of between 64 and 70 degrees. So you can't just move it up north, the crop, in order to save it. So that's a challenge. The rising temperatures are also adding to the proliferation of plant disease, and independent farmers, smallholder farmers with plots of land that are 5 acres or less make up 75 to 85% of the world's coffee. They're struggling to make a reliable living. Mm-hmm. So if we could figure out how to translate coffee fruit into into food and beverage products that appeal to a mass audience, and generate significant demand for that, it solves all those problems.
Absolutely. And fundamentally, from a business economics, what you guys are doing makes a lot of sense because really there wasn't, at least for now, intrinsic value, but you're creating that value through this process of productization. I want to go back to your background around craft brewery. And when we think about brewery, again, more on the alcohol side, there's a lot of complexities around fermentation. And fermentation is a very tricky process that depends on which bacteria and the underlying materials, and then, of course, the environment and the process. Very nuanced. Really, it's, as I'm sure you've done it yourself, it takes years to really craft that and have mastery of that. When you're dealing with coffee fruits and the fermentation, which fundamentally, aside from bacteria, is going to be sugar, tell us about the uniqueness of this product that you're working with and how you've had to experiment to figure out how to bring out the best and to have that flavor profile and the health benefits and the caffeine that you ultimately have so that it became the kind of product that you're using now or are selling now.
Well, in my history in craft beer, I started out in creative services, working on brand strategy, consumer research, developing consumer insights to enhance the vibrancy of the relationship between craft beverage brands and consumers. But I don't have a brewing background. I like to say that I was more responsible for the consumption side of the business. I enjoy craft beer. But one thing that I knew, migrating from craft beer over to cold brewed coffee, is I was interested in exploring a beverage category that didn't involve fermentation because it is very complicated. It's oftentimes that the yeast strains are the ones that dictating the next style of beer that's to come, come out of the bright tank. So with coffee fruit, because there's so much nutritional value, when we were originally experimenting with it, we're using a dried form called cascara, and that's more the traditional form because of the lack of significant demand for it. They're simply drying it at source and then exporting it in bags that look a lot like coffee bags. And so we would then steep that, create a cascara concentrate that we then shipped off to a co-packer to blend with other ingredients. And RIFF Energy Plus is pasteurized, and so we don't have that aspect or that stage in house. So we're relying on a co-packer for that. But then, because coffee fruit is a nascent category within coffee, there are new processes that are coming online. And so we recently identified a supplier that's actually squeezing the coffee fruit at source and producing a coffee fruit juice concentrate. The reason why we're excited about that is because the steeping process was translating the caffeine over to the beverage, and it was translating the flavor compounds over to the beverage, but wasn't really translating the antioxidants and the vitamins and minerals over to the beverage. But with coffee fruit juice concentrate, that's a step in the right direction. There's still more work to be done to optimize the nutritional value of coffee fruit in a way that can be, integrated into food and beverage products, consumables.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for clarifying that. And so, if they're pressing it at the source when it's still fresh, what's the duration that we're talking about? And is there a time period that it has to be processed to get to that essentially fruit juice extract? Versus, when if it's too long of a period, some of the essential oils and things evaporates, and you lose some of the health benefits.
Yeah, so it's a fruit juice concentrate. So it's actually just like any other fruit juice concentrate, but it's a coffee fruit. And what happens when you're processing coffee with the primary category being coffee beans is you're depulping the beans, basically running it through a machine that squeezes the beans out of the fruit. That punctures the protective skin. The coffee fruit is high in moisture content, it's high in sugars, it's high in all these nutritionals. So it's really a rich environment for microbials. So it has to be processed pretty quickly, within 24, 48 hours of depulping and processing at the source when extracting the beans. Otherwise, it spoils fairly quickly. And that's one of the reasons why it creates an environmental mess when it's just being thrown to waste. We toured coffee farms in Colombia for a couple of weeks in 2017, and we saw these areas dedicated in the back lots of these coffee farms that were dedicated to coffee fruit waste. And the trees that pre-existed this waste pile were actually lifeless, dead, no leaves. Microbials and mycotoxins develop, and it seeps into soils and water tables, wreaking havoc on the environment and making that land no longer useful for future production. So that's a sad thing of it, is taking something really wonderful, throwing it to waste, and it creates this this really nasty problem.
Now, I recognize that you're working with a third party on this, but for this to really scale, we're talking about at some point somebody has to pay for the capex, right, at the source to be able to actually create this into juice extract or juice that can be exported. Who's going to pay for that infrastructure?
Well, we're at the beginning stages. Ideally, we would be working directly with farms and sourcing coffee fruit. Right now, we're reliant on third parties. We're a small brand with limited resources. So, who's going to pay for that? Well, hopefully, we see ourselves as being a leader in developing awareness and demand for coffee fruit just by telling the story. And we've been reached out to by large coffee brands, Europe and the US and Japanese coffee brands, companies who are seeking also to solve this problem. Many companies are now being held to a higher level of accountability with regard to sustainability and responsibility when it comes to the environment, and they're contributing to this significant issue. So I have had many conversations with larger coffee suppliers who are wanting to develop a coffee fruit or cascara product line, and just trying to persuade them that they need to invest against this. They need to invest against technology and innovation with regard to processes to optimize that nutritional content when it comes to consumable products. And many of them, these are large companies, so they're not nimble. They're slow to move. And I tell them, you're like a oil tanker out in the ocean. We're a speedboat, but somebody has got to see that this is not only the right thing to do by the planet and by coffee farmers, but also it's an enterprise opportunity that is quite significant, and we'll get behind investing in it.
Well, I mean, ultimately, to your point, it's a new revenue stream that doesn't exist. So, I mean, for them, they treat this as waste or a cost leader, but in fact, you can actually create a whole new product line around it. So, that to me is a great way to lift your overall profitability. Let's change topics a little bit. It looks like, again, because you're focused more on the marketing, branding, and so forth, you've I think partnered up with Sedona Prince, a basketball player out of or with Oregon Ducks, I believe. Tell us about that, and what does this mean for the brand?
Well, Sedona has got an amazing following on social media. She has over 3 million followers on TikTok, which is about 1 million more followers than a brand called Nike. And they're highly engaged. And so, being a brand with limited resources in a highly competitive category like energy drinks, going up against the Cokes and Pepsis of the world, we are looking constantly for ways to kind of hack the system. So how can we reach a large population of people with limited resources? We're really relationship driven. So I happen to be able to have the opportunity to meet with Sedona Prince when visiting the University of Oregon. We were doing about a 3-day stint there, guest speaking about RIFF, the RIFF brand, speaking to the Center for Sustainable Business Practices, the entrepreneurial center there. And we have another brand ambassador, Vernon Davis, who is a retired NFL tight end who is a Super Bowl champion. So we all went over and we were doing the tour on campus, and we were invited to a dinner, and Sedona Prince happened to be the one welcoming at the door. And we just had about 45 minutes at the end of the table to kind of talk more about values and talk about life and family. And we found that there was a significant amount of alignment. So the interest that she developed in RIFF was rather organic. It was aside from being a business opportunity for her as an NIL athlete, and more about the values and being excited about what RIFF stood for. So that then led to a long process working with her agent. She works with a national agency, the same agent that represents Brittany Griner. So it's pretty high profile, and negotiated. Really, it was a great process, but negotiated an unprecedented NIL deal where Sedona is our chief community officer at RIFF, and really cares about the company's purpose, objective of seeking a triple bottom line, but also what we're doing for coffee farmers and helping to solve the sustainability issue. So it's a part of her daily life, the RIFF Energy Plus. She drinks it regularly. And so it's just really a simple, I guess, natural and organic relationship that led to this format.
Super. So let me talk a little bit broader into the kind of the energy drinks category. You, of course, have the monster beverage backed by Coca-Cola and the massive Red Bull that spends, who knows how much money in terms of endorsements, to Bang Energy that's minted its owner, Jack Oak, a billionaire, although as a company, they've declared bankruptcy, Chapter 11. Where do you see this category going? And more specifically, how does what's happening with Bang Energy potentially concern you, or maybe there's an opportunity that it actually opens up?
Yeah, well, I think the issue with Bang was really conflict with the distribution agreement with Pepsi, right? So they had some challenges there. As far as consumer demand, there appeared to be plenty of demand for Bang. We hear about it all the time. Celsius is a disruptor in the category as a functional beverage line. But one thing we like to say is, or I guess it just makes sense for us, is that, we started as a cold brew coffee company. We stumbled upon what we see as coffee's dirty. Now it's a little secret, this huge sustainability issue. And as an outcome of that, the energy drink category chose us. We didn't really choose the energy drink category. So that category, choosing that category was in response to, the beverage that's naturally produced from cascara or coffee fruit, because it has caffeine. So there's primarily an energy benefit, but it's one of the toughest categories in the country to compete in. And so the way we're going to make a difference is not by pushing the product through the channel and having this, we don't have the resources and infrastructure like a Starbucks or some of these other large brands to all of a sudden, seemingly overnight have a national presence. Every C-store, every natural grocery store, or conventional grocery store you go to, you see it in market. What we're really seeking to do is just develop more of an organic groundswell from the consumer side and creating more of a pull strategy when going to market. And that's where somebody like Sedona can make a real difference for RIFF.
Super. Well, thank you so much for joining. I've been joined by Paul Evers, CEO of RIFF.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Scott. It was a great conversation.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.